Hi, back again. Just a couple of tips to facilitators about the performance spectrum and the high performance strategy, and you'll see how this unfolds when you read the facilitator guide. If you look over here, the performance spectrum, the flip chart now can be flushed out quite extensively. And it may or may not go this far in your sessions. Of course, you'll decide based on time and the needs and what's going to really add value to the team. And I'll bring the camera closer in just a moment, but from a bigger picture perspective, we can start out in the previous clip demonstrated by identifying disengaged, engaged, and ownership sections of the performance spectrum, and how we have actively disengaged and disengaged, checklist mentality or take the initiative mentality in the engaged category, and in ownership, everyday inspired and all in. Another layer on the performance spectrum is what are the strategies that leaders use to attempt to improve performance in themselves and other individuals and in teams. In the disengaged, it's policies and procedures to assure accountability, in which case the motivation is external. And then here, the engaged category is we use strategies to get buy-in. We really need everybody's buy-in. We hear that word all the time. And that's when leaders are beginning to shift their strategies from an external motivation to more of an internal motivation, as displayed here. When we go to the ownership part of the spectrum, the strategies that leaders use is to build and develop the missing piece, to build their culture, having culture as part of their strategy, like P&G and OI has now in their large strategic plan initiatives. And we all know, and based on the conversation that comes from the participants in our room, that motivation and ownership and accountability is actually internal. The individuals are driving that. Let's look at another level then. In one of the questions when we're looking at the performance spectrum is to ask the participants to reflect on the 3 approaches to building the culture and how that overlays on the spectrum. And I may draw another line of the spectrum on the flip chart that would be reactive, proactive, and build and develop upstream. After we're done introducing the performance spectrum as a positioning flip chart to moving forward with the coming tools, we invite the participants to be in small groups and assign them each a tool that we've already explored and ask them to discuss and present 3 ways in which that up-levels performance. And we guide them in a very brief conversation and reflection back to the performance spectrum. Then we move on, and all of you know this well, to how the path of life in establishing guidelines, and that's what this middle flip chart represents. The math equations, the path of life, the statistics, and then the 3 ways in which we establish guidelines and co-create alignment on guidelines, boundaries, and expectations. Very specific language here. Please note that, and it's highlighted in the facilitator guide, that it's co-creating alignment, that we're establishing guidelines and co-creating the alignment on guidelines, expectations, and boundaries. A little bit of a conversation about how that differentiates from creating policies and procedures to assure accountability. Really key conversation there. After we have explored the 3 ways to establish guidelines, which you know what they are, tell me. Right, Pilar. No path. Was that Sue? Off the path. And Tom? Thanks. On the path. We can then very quickly go back to the performance spectrum, and I would recommend that you do write this on your performance spectrum, that we have off the path, segueing into on the path, and on the path here. No path, off the path, on the path. And I would write that in according to what the participants in the room tell me what they believe is the overlay here on the performance spectrum. This, as we know, is a positioning. It's a tool in and of itself, but it also positions us for the high performance strategy, formerly known as the communication spiral, of which we already have the flip chart nearly complete because of the different points in day 1 and the morning and day 2. As we look at the high performance strategy, we have a very important conversation about we're living these 5 elements and expressing them in every moment of every day, in every interaction. And it's a matter of whether we're consciously expressing them and being effective or unconsciously expressing them. Some of us are effective when we do that, and others we may not. We may not be getting the results that we want. But we can also look at that as an overlay on the performance spectrum if it's appropriate, if it adds value and there's time. And if you wish to draw one more layer here, could be when we go from unconsciously and ineffectively expressing these 5 elements over to consciously aware and actively expressing these 5 elements of the high performance strategy, formerly known as communication spiral, in every interaction of every day, intentionally doing it way upstream. So we can accelerate, and down here we've written accelerate performance and results. Can't wait to hear some of your feedback on how this actually adds value and ties all of this together into one whole strategy. See you soon.